Hello and welcome, Deerfield and Highland Park High School families. I'm Jen Pendergast, one of the post-secondary counselors at Highland Park.
Hello, everyone. Tracy Flowers, post-secondary counselor at Deerfield High School. All right, it looks like everyone has slowly entered the room, so I'm going to go ahead and get our presentation started with some introductions. So, on behalf of District 113, Deerfield and Highland Park High School, we thank you for joining us to tonight's program, Understanding Financial Aid and Scholarships. My name is Tracy Flowers, and I'm one of the post-secondary counselors at Deerfield High School, and we are joined by Jennifer Pendergast, post-secondary counselor at Highland Park. We will be serving as tonight's moderators. This presentation will be recorded and made available later in the week. Tonight, we are lucky to have Jerry Sabrinsky, Associate Vice President of Financial Aid at Lake Forest College. Jerry serves as the Associate Vice President at Lake Forest, where he worked for over 25 years. He has extensive experience in financial aid, beginning his career at DePaul University. Jerry is highly regarded for his personalized approach, guiding families through the financial aid process and ensuring that students receive optimal funding packages. His expertise has made him a sought-after speaker at many high school programs and on national platforms such as Good Morning America. Jerry is also actively involved in national financial aid organizations, advocating for greater access to higher education. So, welcome, Jerry, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tracy. You flatter me. Thank you. I'm a little embarrassed. I might be blushing, but I'm so happy to be here. I'm glad you asked me. I love what I do. 4+ decades in the profession at Lake Forest and DePaul, and I never get tired of it. So I'm hoping that you all feel the same way. I'm going to make sure technology is our friend by sharing my screen and starting my PowerPoint. Got it? Wonderful. So I have so much that I want to share with you. A lot of really good information to kind of walk you through what college costs are all about, what kind of help is out there in terms of financial aid and advocacy for yourself and the next steps and a little bit of the real cost of college, what families really are paying for college these days, as opposed to what we see in the news or hear about all these sometimes the doom and gloom stories of college costs are rising exponentially. I'll talk a little bit about what financial aid is. So when we at a college, whether we're in admissions or financial aid, when we lapse into our financial aid speak, I'll give you a sense of what some of that is all about. How we make financial aid offers, how we send them out to families, what they look like, how you can compare them, some of the deadlines, and certainly last but not least, where to find help. I say this right now because you have two of the best college counseling counselors and offices, yeah, not only in the state of Illinois, but really across the country. You've got some absolutely wonderful there, and with me. Whether a family is interested in Lake Forest College or not, I just love answering questions. I love troubleshooting. I love walking them through the process. So with that said, a lot of the conversations I'm having more and more these days is especially because the news talks about the skyrocketing costs of a college education. So really is college affordable today for any family whatsoever? A lot of it has to do with perception. I mean, there is the sticker price, the sticker shock of over 500 colleges now across the country. Their sticker price is $90,000 a year. And for some of them, even more than that. And for a lot of families, a lot of people, sometimes me, perception is reality. We look at that and think, well, that must be the case. But I'm here to tell you that's not the case, that really college is more affordable now than it ever has been. 90% of all currently enrolled first year students receive some type of financial aid to help them with that sticker price. 95% of private colleges, many times 99% and 100% at private colleges, even at public universities, 2-year, 4-year, flagship, 80%, 85% of families get some type of financial aid to help them with that sticker price. And of the help that's given to a family, more than 2/3 of it is in the form of free money, what we call gift aid. It's a grant or scholarship. Nothing that's paid back. It's not a student loan. It's not work study. It's given to the student because either they need it or they deserve it or they merited it. It helps them really reduce that sticker price, in many cases, and we hope, down to a much more manageable level. There's a website that I use all the time and I share with every family every chance I can, collegecost.ed.gov. This is a really nice starting point for many families to get a sense of the generosity of colleges. Every one of these pictures, these icons, I guess, is a link to another website. There's a couple on here that I use all the time, but the one I focus on right now is College Navigator. The College Navigator allows you to plug in the name of a college and really gives you an upfront sense of what a college is all about, what kind of school they are, where they're located, what kind of financial aid they have. I've got a screenshot to share with you. And of course, it's Lake Forest College. But this gives you a sense of, 4-year private liberal arts college located north of Chicago. Every one of those categories you see at the bottom, if you can see that, you can drill down into a lot more detail about the types of financial aid, what kind of students are admitted, what kind of sports teams they have, how is their public safety and community service, so many different variables. If you were to drill down on the financial aid piece of that, and here I use Loyola University in Chicago as an example, what you'll see is how many students receive financial aid. And you can see here at Loyola, 99% of their first year class receives something. How much they get from the college itself, or from the university itself, how much they get from federal and state grants. There's a really nice tool out there called a net price calculator. When we look at this, so a Loyola example, Loyola and every college, every university wants a family to focus on not the sticker price, but really what it's costing you. And there's a standard definition of that called the net. It's called the net price, but it really is the net cost to you. I liken it a lot to healthcare. If you're having a surgery, and I had shoulder surgery actually about a year ago, I didn't not have the surgery because the price of it was probably $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. But I had it because with my health insurance, I actually paid much, 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 much less than that. So that's how kind of we look at the cost of a higher education as well. We look at the sticker price, and that's all in. That's tuition fees, housing, meals, books, and health insurance. We subtract just the gift aid, just the scholarships, and the difference is the net price or the net cost to you. There are a lot of other options that help you with some of those additional costs, but on every college's website, they got a net cost calculator specific to that college, very college specific in terms of what they offer to their families. It asks you to plug in a little bit about where you're coming from financially and where the student is coming from academically to give you a sense of, on average, what a student like yours might receive at that particular college from grants and scholarships, but also from student loans and work study eligibility. These net cost calculators, and if I keep calling it net cost, I feel like someday the federal government, the U.S. Department of Education, what's left of it, will say, okay, fine, Jerry wants to call it net cost calculator, we'll call it net cost. But in any case, they come in many shapes and sizes. So many have bells and whistles and different colors, but truly, they all answer the questions of what it might cost you to attend that particular college, you as a family unit. It's not a guarantee, it's not a promise, it's not the application, but it is a really nice starting point. And when we talk about financial aid, really we're talking about anything and everything that has a dollar amount attached to it that is given to the family, given to the student to help them with, again, I go back to that sticker price. Whether it's gift aid in the form of a scholarship or grant, which are kind of interchangeable, or in addition, there's student loan options and work study options. The sources of financial aid, where all of this money is coming from, the federal government, through the use of our federal tax dollars, they fund all of the federal grant programs, the federal student loan programs, the federal work study programs. As a quick aside, with what's happening in Washington these days, and with that bill that was just passed, if I pull out my crystal ball, or if I become a prognosticator, financial aid will not be affected. The amounts of financial aid out there will not be reduced, even though in the bill that was passed, it was proposed that a lot of the federal grants would be reduced, sometimes drastically. But the Senate Appropriations Committee, in a very bipartisan support, I mean, literally 26-3, voted to not touch federal financial aid at all. So the Pollyanna, the eternal optimist in me, says we're going to be okay. Worst case scenario, if this were to happen, it would be a couple years from now, because a lot of the funding is what's called forward funded. So the budgets that are working on right now are really for 2 years from now. But long story short, the federal government, with all of its federal aid programs, is one of the sources out there. Every state across the country also offers grants and scholarships to its residents. Here in Illinois, we've got an agency called the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. They offer a grant program that, if a student is eligible for it, can get up to $8,000 in a grant, in free money, to be used anywhere across the state of Illinois. Can't go across the borders, obviously, but 2-year, 4-year, public, private, they can use the Illinois MAP grant at any of the colleges in Illinois if they qualify for it. Colleges and universities are a huge source of funding. When all is said and done, you get a financial aid offer from a college and you look at everything that's in there, 75% of that is probably coming from the college itself. The rest is coming in federal government, the state of Illinois, or private sources. I am a huge advocate, and I'm passionate, and I've got to be careful about getting on my soapbox or anything, but for students to do anything and everything they possibly can to take advantage of some of the private sources of scholarships out there will always, 99.9% of the time, be a win-win situation. It will always add to their total financial aid. It will almost never subtract from what they're receiving, unless they're getting a full ride at some school, and a full ride meaning everything is covered. Then perhaps an outside scholarship will come into play. But in many cases, any outside scholarships really only reduce a student loan option or the work study option. So it really just adds to the total financial aid package, which then ultimately reduces your out of pocket. So in the world of financial aid, in my profession, it's kind of geeky sometimes, but we have a mantra that says, when you're passionate about something, which I am about outside scholarships, there is no horse too dead to beat. So every colleague of mine across the country will say the same thing. Students, do as much as you possibly can to help find some of these outside sources, because that's your first line of defense, your first line of funding. That's what colleges will automatically consider a student for. Automatically, when they apply for admission, has nothing to do with where a family is coming from financially, and everything to do with what the student brings to the table. What their credentials look like. If they took the test, well, they all take the test, but whether a school is test optional and they ask for your test scores or not, we look at that, or the transcript at the very least, or how well they interviewed, and I'll put some of those private sources out there as well. That's the very first thing that a student is considered for. And many, many, many colleges are very transparent up front to help you in the search process by saying, here's our scholarship grid. This is what we guarantee. Here's an example of, you'll get this much scholarship if your high school GPA is this, or your SAT is this, or your ACT is this. the best of these three columns, for example. Here's one example, another example of, again, different kind of almost always based on test scores or high school GPA. If a school is not test optional, and test optional meaning if you tested well, great, send us your scores. If you didn't, then we don't want to know. If they're not test optional, then they will look at both of these things. They will look at the test scores. They will look at the high school GPA as well. And again, colleges have a way of knowing whether a high school GPA is weighted or not unweighted, and taking that into consideration as well. So then we piggyback on top of all of those merit-based scholarship options that are out there with what we call need-based financial aid. One of my screens earlier showed that 95% of students, for example, at private colleges get financial aid. Of that 95%, not unlikely that 75% is need-based financial aid in addition to the merit-based financial aid. The need-based looks at asks you to fill out some financial aid applications, which I'll talk about in a little bit more depth in just a minute. It can be the same sources, whether it's the federal, the state, the student loans, the work study, the state of Illinois. All of this together can also be need-based. It's a combination of all of these things that we put together that we send to a family, that we send to a student as the financial aid package, the financial aid offer. For a student to be considered for a merit-based scholarship, it really, truly, all they're doing is applying for admission. It's at that moment in time that the college is doing two things. One, deciding whether they're admissible, and two, determining how much of their merit scholarship they're eligible for. And it's not just academic-based scholarships anymore. There are so many more talent-based scholarships, whether it's the fine arts or athletics or leadership abilities or social justice activities or students involved in green initiatives. So many other things that a college is looking for in the student's application that they will reward, with a scholarship. Not only the academic, but also these other talents that the student has. If you get the merit-based scholarship letter from the college, and that's good enough, then that's what makes that college affordable for you. You don't need to do anything else. Financial aid, the whole financial aid process is not necessarily a requirement. In the state of Illinois, at public high schools, it is kind of a requirement to fill out the FAFSA. But at this moment in time, if that's all you want, you don't need to do anything else. But I would strongly encourage you to look at some of the other options, because I promise you, you will be pleasantly surprised at some of the other options that are given to a student in addition to just that merit-based financial aid. So to be considered for the need-based financial aid, there is this universal application called the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It collects some really basic demographic and financial information from a family to calculate an index number. It's the index number that tells us how much more a student is eligible to receive. The lower the index number, the more the student receives in need-based financial aid. Kind of a quick overview of the FAFSA. It's available October 1st, so it will open this year for if you've got a senior in high school. If there's anybody in the audience who has a junior or a sophomore, nothing you can do right now, but this is also a really good time to hear this, so you kind of have a sense of what to do October of the student's senior year in high school. It's only available at FAFSA.gov, and I point that out because there are a couple copycat sites, I guess, that might look like they could be the FAFSA, but they're not. And it's only available at this one secure website. It's 2 sections long. It asks about student information and parent information. And I actually have some of the screenshots to share with you because there have been some changes that I'm excited about, that hopefully you're excited about, that I'll show you in just a few minutes. The whole need-based process is more income-driven than anything else. Even though the FAFSA will still ask about assets, and we'll see that in just a few minutes, it's really more about the income and the special circumstances that a family has that calculates that index number. The FAFSA is new and improved for 26-27. It was overhauled dramatically for the 24-25 school year. How do I put this gently? It was a hot mess. It 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 was overhauled, and the intention was great, but it stumbled a lot in its opening. Did much better in 25-26, and it will do much, 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 much better for 26-27. So if this is your first time filling out a FAFSA, your timing is perfect, because the 26-27 FAFSA is so much more user friendly and intuitive than ever before. But to access the FAFSA, to access this financial aid application, it requires a username and password for the student and for one of the parents. Both parents can have one if both parents are part of the household, but really only one parent needs to have an access, have a username and password. It has to be separate. It cannot be the same email, cannot be the same, well, it could be the same password, but it can't be the same email. That's something that you can do now, even though the FAFSA doesn't open until October 1st, because you'll be so excited to get a jump on it. You actually can create your usernames and passwords tonight, this week, this weekend, so that once the FAFSA opens, you can log right into it. Generally, again, more of a 30,000 view of it. The student, when it asks the student about their information, it's going to ask for their identity and their contact information: name, address, social security number, date of birth, cell phone number, email address. If the student had any income 2 years ago, and I'll talk about that in just a second, it will automatically bring that into the FAFSA from the IRS database. It will also ask the student to tell us where you want the FAFSA information sent. Students can list up to 20 colleges on the FAFSA. It really was just a couple of years ago that number was limited to 10 colleges, but now students can list up to 20 at the same time, and we all get the information on our end, and we all get the results at approximately the same time as well. Every college has a unique FAFSA code, which allows us to then download your information. It's especially important for some of the large state systems, like Wisconsin, for example. Madison has a different FAFSA code than Milwaukee, than La Crosse, than Whitewater. The FAFSA code is 6 digits long. At Lake Forest, ours is 001706. I'm just saying, in case you wanted to jot that down, 001706. If you were to put that number down, that's what would allow us, that's what would trigger us saying, hey, there's a FAFSA out there that is being sent to you by the student, download it and start the process. Students then, when they get to the end of the FAFSA application, they're going to review it just to make sure that everything looked okay, and then they will sign it electronically with that username and password that they used to log into it. Parents, same for you. Your username and password is your electronic signature as well. Again, for the parents, it's the same kind of stuff, identity and contact information. Parents, for your financial information, here is where that new tool called the IRS Direct Data Exchange tool comes into place, because you have to consent, and I'll see that in just a minute. You'll consent to say, yes, bring my information in from the IRS database. That's what populates all of the income questions, so that you don't have to see them. You don't have to worry about what they're asking for. It's just a certain number of income questions off your tax return that populate the FAFSA. So you'll use the IRS Direct Data Exchange to do that. You'll also be able to update your marital status, household size, how many kids you have in college at the same time, your state of legal residence. And this is important because the FAFSA is a universal application. It's a one-size-fits-all form for undergrads, graduates, law students, medical students, Illinois, Iowa, California. So indicating Illinois, that's how we will determine whether your student eventually qualifies for the grant from Illinois, the Illinois MAP grant. And again, with your username and password, that's your electronic signature. That's how we will sign it. It will get processed. We'll get the results of it. Some of the frequently asked questions that we get first are about the definition of parents. If parents are married, then both parents' information is required on the FAFSA. If parents are divorced or separated and the student is only living with one parent, then only that one parent's information is required on the FAFSA. Here it gets a little, not tricky at all, but you decide if it's a single parent household, if parents are divorced, for example, it asks with which parent the student lives with the most or has lived with the most over the last 12 months. If there's equal custody between both parents, the nice thing is that there are 365 days in the year. And so unless a student is literally packing up from one parent's household at 11:59 p.m. and getting at the other one at 12:01 a.m. the next day, you really get to choose with which parent has the student resided the most over the last 12 months. That becomes the parent of record on the FAFSA. The IRS data, the direct data exchange, you automatically will consent to that. That's actually a really nice tool to bring the information directly into the FAFSA. I mentioned earlier that this whole process of need-based financial aid is more income-driven than anything else, and it truly is 99% of the time. Even though assets are asked for on the FAFSA, they really don't come into play much. Unless you've got $250,000 or more in savings or cash on hand, when all is said and done, and I've done this kind of research myself or our families at Lake Forest, when all is said and done, if you do have assets that are covered in the FAFSA, sometimes 3, 4, 5% of the value of them are used as a resource, which is sometimes can be next to nothing. But when we talk about the assets, what we don't want you to put on the FAFSA is anything about home equity, your primary residence, nothing about any retirement accounts that you have, whether it's a 401k or TIAA CREF or Roth IRA, no retirement accounts, and no 529 plans, those education savings plans for other children. What you have in one of those education savings plans for the college student who's filling out the FAFSA, that gets reported. But then you also don't report anything about insurance policies or annuities or anything else. It's really just what I call cash on hand. So whether you have money in savings or stocks or other real estate, a vacation home or something that's creating income for you, or a farm or business, which because that definition has changed, for school year, or if you have an education savings plan, typically called a 529 plan, for the student who is completing the FAFSA, that's reported on the FAFSA. But again, I go back to, unless it's huge dollar amount, $250,000 or more, it's really not going to affect that index number very much. You're also filling out one FAFSA per student. So if you've got more than one child in college, you're filling out obviously 2 FAFSAs for 2 kids in college. Student information is going to be different on each, obviously, but the parent information will be the same on both. Here's kind of a screenshot, the landing page of what you see when you go to FAFSA.gov. This is where the student will click, most of the student will click on that little blue box on the left-hand side that says Start a New Form. When the student does that, they will click on that little radio button that says they're filling the student. Before they see anything about their login, they see these very helpful, very short videos, which actually have been revised in the last year. And I really do like these. Parents, you're going to see the same thing when you actually go to your parent section to fill out your part of it. It's, what is the FAFSA form? Why are you filling out? Whose information is required on the FAFSA? When we talk about a contributor, we're talking about a parent, quite honestly. Why they have to put their information on there, what to expect, how long will it take, and then what happens, fill it out. Colleges get the results. We then correspond and we communicate with the family saying, hey, we have your FAFSA results. Thanks for putting the FAFSA code of 001706 on there. Here's what our next steps are. So when the student logs into the FAFSA, they're going to see all this pre-printed information, because this actually, and parents, for you as well, this comes from the information they put in when they created their username and password. So it's name, date of birth, address, social security number. The only field on here that is editable is the email address. So if a student on here says, "No, I put a Yahoo account, but I really want it to go to my Gmail account," they can change that here. They can't change anything else on here because that was already confirmed when they did their username and password. Here's a kind of a change. Well, not kind of. Here's a change to the FAFSA this year, which is an exciting change for us because it's so much easier than it has been in the past. So, if a student is not an independent student, and for a typical high school senior, they're dependent on parents, and so parents' information is required. Student needs to invite the parent to be a contributor. It clicks on this link saying, "Yes, I want to invite my parent." The only thing they have to put on here is just the parent's email address. Nothing else about the parent, not their name, not their date of birth, not their social security number. That has changed from last year. So unless you were hovering at this part of the application over the student's shoulder saying, "Well, here's my social, here's my date of birth," it's now the student just needs to put in your parent's email address, and then you will get an invitation to complete your part of the FAFSA. It'll then double check, say, "Hey, student, do you want us to send this invitation to your parent at this email address?" So that's the one thing where you want to make sure that it's the correct email address at this point. That invitation is sent. Parents, you will receive an email, which I'll show you shortly. And then the student then just continues in their section. If the student had income, that will be brought in from the IRS database. The student then selects the colleges that they want the information sent to. A couple different ways that they can do that. One of the very first things that a college will tell you is what their FAFSA code is. So if you go to the financial aid website, they're going to say, "Hey, just plug in our school code here," or you can search for it. You can look up the school's name. You can look up part of their name, where they're located. Then you add them. The student adds the colleges to the FAFSA. This is kind of what you'll see. You'll be able to, I'm going to go back. You'll be able to review saying, okay, these are the colleges that the student put down on here. Students can add up to 20. They don't need to put 20, if they know 5 right now, but later on they're thinking about a 6th or a 7th or an 8th. They can easily go back in and add those additional colleges. If for some reason a student does put 20, all at once, that's fine too. But because it's limited to 20, if they wanted to add the 21st or 22nd college, they would have to go back in and remove one of those initial colleges and then add that additional school, which after the FAFSA gets processed, that information is never lost by any of the colleges who received it. So if they were to go in and, let's say in this example, if you can see this, if they were to go in and say, instead of American Career College, I want to put University of Wisconsin Whitewater on there. American Career College will already have the results and they'll never lose it. Whitewater will then get the new results of the FAFSA. And then the student signs it. They're going to click that little box at the bottom and sign it. And that's it. That's all they need to do. They will get this confirmation page, but it's a pending submission. So the keyword is pending submission. The student half of the FAFSA is done, but it's not complete because parents, it needs your information on there. So parents, you'll get the email address, or you'll get an email. It may or may not look like this, but there's going to be a link in here, and you can see on the right-hand side at the top, that was the code, the unique code that was generated from the students section when they said, "Yes, I want to invite a parent." They put in your email address. It was this code that was created just for you. If you click on the link, and what I would strongly suggest is when you get this email invitation, when you click on accept invitation, it takes you directly to FAFSA.gov. So directly into the FAFSA, and that's where you will log in with your username and password that you created. You will then accept. Now, when you do that, when you click on accept invitation, it has that code already in there. If you wanted to go a different route, you absolutely could. You could just log into FAFSA.gov and put in your username and password. But to link it up to the student's FAFSA, you absolutely must need that invitation code that's in there. That's going to be key to this. And then by accepting, all these very secure kind of sites saying, hey, just wanting you to know that this is a secure application, but you're going to share your information with the federal student aid program so that they can create the FAFSA results, the index number to send to the different colleges. Parents, here's where you absolutely must provide consent to the IRS to allow your income to be brought into the FAFSA. If you don't, and you are always given the option, but if you do not provide consent, the FAFSA is dead in the water. Nothing happens to it. It just never gets processed. It absolutely needs your consent to say, yes, bring that information into the FAFSA. When you do that, you'll see this page that says, okay, we are securely importing your information. With everything that happens in the world today, with all of these hacks, with all these breaches, knock wood, but in the decades that the FAFSA has been around, there has never, God, I hope I don't jinx us, but there has never been a security breach or a hack or anything into the FAFSA data itself, because there are so many different levels. And this new word, this multi-level authentication, that takes place. So know that when you put this information into the FAFSA, really it's only the college that's getting it, and it sits in a very secure site at the federal student aid programs as well. But you're putting in you're saying, yes, I consent income information being brought into there. Here's where you then get to kind of reiterate saying, because the student has not said anything about you other than your email address, here's where you will put down your marital status. You'll put down, where you live, your family size. And this is key too, because initially and automatically, the FAFSA will just consider the number of exemptions you have on your tax return as your family size. So if it's married filing jointly and you've got 2 dependents, your family size is 4. That's not always the case. I mean, since you're, file the tax return, there might be a new member of the family, or you might not be claiming someone, but they really do live at home. So this page will then tell you to put everybody who basically lives under your roof and that you support, whether they're a tax exemption or not. This is where you get to update that. So if you had 4 tax exemptions, but really you do have 5 people living at home, this is where you'll be able to say, forget the exemptions, I'm putting 5. And then of those 5 people, how many other than the student in college will be in college during the upcoming school year as well? So here's where if you've got 2 kids, you'll put 2 in college on each of their FAFSAs. Here's where it will ask you about your assets. And one of the things it asks, and this was new as of 2 years ago, it moved child support that a parent receives from income to assets, which actually is a good thing, because assets get diluted so much that if it's $1,000 or a couple thousand or $10,000 of child support or any of the assets, it's really nothing. I mean, the very first $40,000 to $50,000 of assets are ignored. It's only the amount above that is taken into consideration, whether it's child support or what you have, and literally, and they're changing the wording of this, that current total of cash, savings, and checking accounts. Cash, I mean, I do carry more cash these days because I'm trying to avoid all those credit card fees at restaurants and stores where they add 3% if I use a credit card. So to keep myself on budget, I'm using cash a lot more. But at any given moment, I don't know how much I have. Well, I do kind of know how much I have in cash, but that question, that particular category is really just kind of looking at cash on hand, money that you've got that you could use to help pay for college. It's not looking at money that you might have in the savings account that you're going to use in another week to pay your utilities or your mortgage or some other expenses that you have. Other investments include not the home, but here is where you plug in, if you've got other real estate, what kind of the home equity is not home equity, the equity on the other real estate that you might have, or the value of that 529, that education savings plan, that you have. New, and they changed this. I don't know if you can see this very well on your screens, but kind of the whole back to the future. When it comes to the question of a business or farm, last year, the FAFSA changed the definition and said anybody who owns any business, any farm, we want the value of it. They changed it back to what it was years ago that said, we only want you to report your business worth if you employ more than 100 employees, or if you live and work on a farm and that's your material source of income. So farms, probably not a lot of us or any of us have farm income. The business, that's a big change, because unless it's a huge business of more than 100 employees, you don't put anything on here. If you're self-employed, if you've got a small mom and pop shop, you don't put that in this question either. So that was a very welcome and a very exciting change to say, look, that was very confusing. We need to go back to the future on that. After all of that, you'll get to this page, words, saying, take a look at everything. You'll be able to confirm what you put in. There's that little box at the bottom. You want to make sure you sign that and submit it, because then you will get this confirmation page that says, congratulations, you've done the FAFSA. You're good to go. You're golden. At this moment in time, usually about 48 hours later, the colleges will start to download the FAFSA results. So when you get to this point, you know that you've done everything that you need to do. A couple successful FAFSA completion tips for you. Complete what's called the Federal Student Aid ID, the usernames and passwords, one for the student, one for the parent. You can do that anytime. You can't use them until the FAFSA opens October 1st. The student should absolutely complete their section first. Get that done, parents, before you go into your section, because you really do want to wait for that email invitation, but you don't want to click on that link until the student has gotten their part done. And that one screenshot that said pending submission, get all the student stuff done first, and then you can click on that link. Parent, you're going to click on the link in the invoice, in the invitation, get to that confirmation page that says congratulations, and then you're golden. You're good to go. Couple other tips though. Google Chrome is the very best browser to use. So be very careful with anything else. It works also on Firefox. It doesn't work very much on Safari or Explorer. So Google Chrome, I would absolutely use that. Don't do it on a tablet or on your phone. It's the desktop, it's your laptop that provides you the most consistent and the most complete experience. The other thing too, and we do, there's that autocomplete with a lot of our information. Don't use autocomplete. Or if you do use autocomplete, here's what happens a lot of the times when you use autocomplete. It adds an extra space at the end. So you can plug in your last name, and unless you look at it closely, it added another space there. That will mess everything up. It'll just get lost. Honestly, the most errors that we've seen even this past year were all about spaces at the end of either an email address or a last name or a first name or a social security number. It's very hard to correct. So just kind of heads up about that. When all is said and done, the FAFSA is really cut and dry. You'll see it's pretty easy, pretty user-friendly and intuitive, but does not allow you to color outside the lines or stream of consciousness, or to let us know that there's anything else that you want us going on in your life that you want us to take into consideration, whether there's a change of employment or another kid in college or private school, or you're supporting extended family or emergency home repairs. So many other categories other expenses that we can consider that lower that index number. A couple different ways for us on the college side to get this information. There's a common supplemental financial aid application called the CSS Financial Aid Profile. There are about 500 colleges that either require that or use that. It's a really nice form that says, tell us more that the FAFSA did not, talk about. It asks a lot of the same questions the FAFSA does, but it really does allow you to go into more special circumstance kind of a conversation. If the school doesn't use that or require it, then you cannot use it for them, but they will always have either their own application for financial aid or standalone forms, more likely, that say, if in a conversation with you, if you had a loss of income, fill out our income change form. If you have some healthcare expenses, fill out our healthcare expense form. Getting all of those done into a college allows us to really tailor our response when we make that ultimate financial aid offer to the student and to you. This is the homepage of the College Scholarship Service Financial Aid Profile. I show this because that link in the lower left, that will tell you what colleges use it. If they're not on that list, you can't fill it out for them because they do not have a separate CSS profile code, which is different than the FAFSA code. A couple examples of the colleges that do use it, places like University of Michigan, WashU in St. Louis, USC, Northwestern, Chicago. A lot of colleges that have a lot more to offer, that are very generous with their resources, will use the profile because they really want to know, they really, again, want to tailor that response and give you as much as they possibly can of their own resources. They don't use it to rule out, resources. They won't use it to say, no, you live in a home that's, you have too much equity on it, or you drive this kind of car. They don't know. There's no judgment calls. There's nothing like that. It's really just to learn a little bit more about where you're coming from. Because what we're doing in a financial aid office is, it's a partnership. We want the students and the parents to be the primary partners. And quite honestly, it's your primary responsibility to pay for college as much as you are reasonably able to the extent that you're able. We're not making a judgment call. We're not doing cash flow analysis or anything like that, but we are following some formulas that are set forth, in our profession, in this process, but really to get an appropriate economic strength of the different families that are out there. There's a standard formula that we use, but I'll tell you what, sometimes 2/3 of the time, these special circumstances absolutely can and they do matter in lowering that index number. Throughout this process, communication is vital. We want to make sure that you're doing everything you need to do when you need to do it so that you get as early a response as you can, so that you can ask us questions before you as a family unit make a final decision. We're your advocate. We're not trying to withhold dollars, because I'll tell you what, if a student is admissible, then we want them on campus, and we'll do everything we can in our power that we are reasonably able to do to make it an affordable option for you. You'll get a financial aid award letter, financial aid offer, financial aid package. It's called lots of different things. It will contain a combination of all that gift aid I talked about, the grants and scholarships, the student loans, the work study programs. Cosmetically, it can look very different, even though there is this initiative I'll talk about in just a second about making it more of a common financial aid award letter. But a lot of it can be determined by the cost of attendance. So if a school costs half as much as another school your student is looking at, you'll get half as much financial aid probably. Or if your student has a talent that one school really wants and needs, they may reward that talent more than another school does. There are some colleges in Southern California still that offer scholarships really solely to female students majoring in the natural sciences, because they need female students in those areas. So one of those schools may offer your daughter a $10,000 scholarship, where another school will say, we can't recognize that, but here's another merit-based scholarship of $5,000. Financial aid is renewable for all 4 years. So what you receive the first year, you should be able to expect to receive for all 4 years, unless, and it was none of us, sadly, who won the Powerball, on Saturday, the $1.8 billion. I think it was Texas and, well, I forget the other state. I bought my tickets. I haven't looked yet, but it wasn't me. So unless you were one of the winners of the $1 billion Powerball, you can expect financial aid to be the same. Colleges will do everything in their power to make sure that you're looking at a 4-year cost of education at each of these individual colleges. I talked about this new initiative, which is really nice. Colleges are signing on to, and you can go to collegeprice.org/home. Colleges are saying, yes, we will do everything we can to make sure it's clear, it's transparent, there's no hidden, fine print or anything like that. I really like this. There's quite a few, there's 100 colleges that have pledged to do this already, and many, many, many more are joining it every day. To that end, it's coming up with this kind of common financial aid offer, financial aid award letter. It may not necessarily look like this, but the essence of it should be the same, where it'll talk about the cost, what shows up on the tuition bill versus what indirect costs are. Books, travel, laundry, all sorts of different things. It will then differentiate between the gift aid, the free money, and the student loans and the work study. So the difference between the costs and the gift aid, that's your net cost, your net price. It then will go into detail about student loan options and work study options, other kind of options for parents, whether it's a federal parent loan or a monthly payment plan that the college offers. All of this will be on the financial aid letter itself. One of the other things that I didn't mention, but one of my first slides, that college costs at ed.gov slide, there's another icon in there called the college scorecard. That tells you a little bit about how the college is doing, what their outcomes. Are they meeting what their marketing materials say? On the financial aid award letter, that's where you're going to see some of the what we refer to as return on investment. A lot of people look at it as ROI. Why you should choose that particular college, what the graduation rates are, what the student loans are kept very low. The students who get a job after college, what on average they earn. So in this section of the award letter, colleges kind of toot their horns and say, this is why we think you should come here. Throughout this process, deadlines are huge. They can be vital, they can be important, they can be drop dead dates. So know from the different colleges and the different even outside scholarship sources and for admission, what the drop dead dates are for some of these programs versus priority dates. So trying to get everything done, well in advance. And if you're like me, I'm a very visual person. I out of sight, out of mind for me. So maybe creating a spreadsheet of the different deadlines, saying, let's get everything done for as many colleges as we can by whoever has the earliest deadline. And then you're not doing one college a week for the next 6 to 10 weeks or so. And keeping it on a spreadsheet, whether it's stuck on the front of the refrigerator or on your laptop, just kind of keeping track of the different deadlines, but also keeping track of a contact person at that particular college, who you can call to confirm that you've done everything that you needed to do, and to get a sense of when will you hear in terms of any kind of financial aid offers. Lots of places that you can get help. Deerfield, Highland Park, absolutely take advantage of their expertise, take advantage of them knowing my contact information. So if they have questions, they can contact me anytime. The college's financial aid office is almost always has a person there that is a contact, either sometimes alphabetically for the student or by area. So there are some financial aid offices that divide their student body by alphabet, or say, hey, this person is in charge of Illinois and Wisconsin and Michigan and Iowa and Indiana, or this one will help students on the West Coast or the East Coast. There'll always be someone in admissions and financial aid that you absolutely can talk to for specific questions that you have. I listed a couple different websites here, some really good ones. I mean, if you Google financial aid or scholarships for college, there's going to be a million sites that come up. These are some of the best ones that are out there. College Zone is the state of Illinois. FinaidNight2025.org, that's the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators website that was authored by them. StudentAid.gov is obviously the government site. And there's some really good YouTube videos, like the federal student aid programs, has a really short, very good video about how to create your federal student aid ID, your username and password to get into the FAFSA. Some key takeaways: students are applying for admission now. You're going to fill out the CSS profile or the FAFSA or the FAFSA anytime after October 1st. If there are any special circumstances that you want us to consider, please, please, please let us know so that we can take that into account before we actually start to send out the award letters back. Could anywhere be from as early as November for some schools to as late as April for some schools as well. So kind of staying on top of this and keeping in conversation. I'm going to talk about communication is vital, making sure that we know everything you want us to know. Ask us questions, come to admitted student visit days on campus, because ultimately we want I want every student to enroll in college, obviously. One of the drop dead dates out there is still May 1st, a national candidate reply date, still considered a drop dead date by many colleges, where students must commit by May 1st. After May 1st, all bets are off. Colleges will put the student on a wait list. They'll rescind offers of financial aid. It seems May 1 seems so far away, but kind of the way time is flying, getting everything done, and then having a nice relaxed process, so relaxed conversations, for colleges, which is why the admission process and the financial aid process now both sync up in the fall. It never used to be that way, but now it gives us a little bit more time to explore options, to have conversations, to make, like the educated consumers that we are, very educated, decisions ultimately. I've talked a lot. It maybe TMI for me, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I know that Tracy and Jen were probably trying to answer as many questions as they could throughout my talking head phase, but let me come back to you. And if there's any questions that you want me to answer, I'm all yours.
Well, the one that I saw earlier on, and it's a question that I know I get a lot, is the perception that I make too much, or I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be eligible. Like, I don't think we'd qualify. Like, should I really file? So, can you help dispel that?
Yeah, I can. Although so many different things are taken into consideration, that student aid index number that we talked about, typically for a family of 4 and one child in college, typically that can be 20 to 25% of a family's adjusted gross income off their tax return. So if their adjusted gross income is 150,000 and it's 20%, then it's 30,000 is that index number. Now, what colleges do is look at their cost of attendance, and our cost of attendance is almost $80,000 a year. We would subtract that $30,000, not really a dollar, but that 30,000 index number, and that would give the student $50,000 of need. And so colleges will fill that up. So, and again, because sometimes 2/3 of the time we can take other stuff into consideration. I hate saying if there's an income level, but I will say that if your income is over $500,000 or your assets are over $500,000, then yes, that's probably where the cutoff is.
Thank you, Jerry. We also had just a couple of questions regarding divorced parents and the idea of 50-50. They go back and forth 50-50. Which parent should be filling out the FAFSA? The one with the lower income, the one with their higher income?
Well,
And will the student be able to see all of that financial information about the parent's income? Are they able to see that? So
that's
two-parter.
that's that's a good question. No. What's funny is neither the student nor the parent will see any of the financial information on a FAFSA. It's all encrypted. Only the college will see that. So no, it's kind of a leap of faith that parents assume that what's with the IRS is correct. And so to that end, no student, no parent will see what was actually income information on the FAFSA. On the other end of that, wait, what was the first half of your question? I kind of
The
forgot.
first half was just that question with divorced
Oh
parents,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
who
So
completes the FAFSA.
the rule of thumb is there's a couple things going on here. The definition will say if it is absolutely equal amount of time between both parents, then the parent who has the higher income should be the parent of record on the FAFSA. But if it's not equal, then it is the parent that the student lives with the most over the last 12 months. So it really does come down to a judgment call by the parents. There's no way. It's exactly 50-50.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there were a couple other questions, and I know, we only have a little bit of time here, but a couple of questions about how, um, how, how do our 529 plans used in the process? And also, and I'll just leave it at that for right now.
Yeah. So I like 529 plans. I like education savings plans. Again, because unless you've got a couple $100,000 in there, they're worth it. It does not come into play for financial aid eligibility. So it really only helps. And
Great.
of the 529 plan, the only thing that is reported on the FAFSA is what is under that one college student's name. So it's owned by the parent, but the beneficiary is the college student. So it's only for that one college. And now that's a good question because that's a change. It used to be how many, if you have like three 529 plans, lump them all together. Now you don't. It's just for the college student.
Okay. Great. Tracy, was there anything else that I missed?
Not that I'm seeing.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We will share this recording out, and thank you so much. Jerry will also share the slides out. But
Yep.
thank you, Jerry, once again for giving our families a wonderful presentation and lots of details. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you guys. Thanks for inviting me. Good luck, everyone. It can be an exciting process. So enjoy the ride.